So we're jumping back into Henry Staunton's testimony to the Business and Trade Select Committee today, and it's put to him by the Select Committee that he was fired from the post office and then he's had his reputation trashed, and Henry Staunton says that essentially, because potentially that he has actually been a champion of the subpostmasters and said they should have not only faster compensation but increased compensation than they've already been offered, that he's been fired and then subsequently a smear campaign's been launched against him to try to trash his reputation. Let's jump into the Select Committee.
The Secretary of State goes on to say, she goes on to present her appointment letter or her priorities letter to you, dated 29th of June last year, and that says that you are to provide fair compensation to those affected by the historic failures, and in particular to inject pace into the delivery of compensation for those with overturned convictions.
I mean, obviously, just a point of order to put in place here is that the appointment letter was sent prior to this conversation that's been had. That was a month before, in December 2022, if I'm not mistaken, that he was appointed. The conversation is saying it happened subsequently within January 2023.
That instruction sounds like it's at odds with the impression you walked away with from the conversation with Sarah Mumby.
Absolutely. Because Ms Bumby was talking about the financing issues within Treasury, and I got the very clear message that, I think I put in the file that money is tight. I mean, it was all I was doing was representing what I was told. I mean, of course, I just thought I'd done this file note. It would never see the light of the day other than talking to Nick about it, and I said we're going to proceed with compensation, and I will take the consequences. So the signal. It wasn't what
I mean, putting it bluntly, how much money the Treasury doesn't have isn't really his problem. Now, I know what people say, and I agree. As the operator, as the CEO of any business, you need to have careful control of your income and your expenditure, which is of course true, but what we have to remember about the truly unique nature of the post office scandal is this isn't the post office not being able to balance its own books in terms of day-to-day operation, which it might not be able to anyway, but these significant and massive costs of compensation of the post office inquiry are historic issues that need to be addressed, where they can't be factored into the day-to-day or operational budget of the post office. They're extraordinary costs that, as a taxpayer-owned organisation, has to be funded by the taxpayer, just as if it was a private organisation, they would have to be funded by shareholders, by investments, by loans. So it is important to point out that, in these cases, they should be treated as two separate issues, and really it's for ministers to worry about what the Treasury can and cannot afford, and it's for the post office to stick within an agreed operational budget with an agreement that these are extraordinary costs on top.
The reason would I have done it? It wasn't done for trying to have a discussion in a year's time with the Secretary of State. It was just done as a matter of routine because the words were so odd.
But the signals that you received were different to the letter of what the Secretary of State laid out.
Correct.
So there was an ambiguity.
Yes, I think, as you said, you used the phrase "nod and a wink." I was left with the issue that if I could pull any levers, I should. And actually, I felt it was not an unreasonable lever to pull in respect of the Horizon replacement, but I was not going to go anywhere near a morally wrong decision not to pay our postmasters and not to do anything that impacted the statutory inquiry.
Nick Reed, in his letter to me last week, says, "I've personally never been instructed to delay on compensation, nor have any of my leadership team to my knowledge." It sounds like he can write that because of the conversation that you had with him after your conversation with Sarah Mumby.
He can write that because I said to him, we're not going to do anything that's not the morally right decision of continuing to pay compensation. And I did say to him, and if anything, we should accelerate it.
So you stand by
absolutely
what you've said in public about the message you received from a senior civil servant that compensation payments should be slowed down to minimise the financial liability.
Yes, I do.
So in conclusion there, he's saying that he didn't actually slow down the compensation, but that he was being pressured to slow down the compensation due to budgetary worries, shall we say. and the financial aspects of it.
Mr. Lavery.
Mr. Staunton, you were previously chairman of W.H. Smith, the Phoenix Group, and Ashdead Group, vice chairman of Legal and General, and also served on the boards of ITN, B Sky B, Ladbrokes, and Standard Bank. How do you feel about the attack on your honesty, attack on your character, your credibility, basically trashing your career? I mean, basically, even in this session we've had today, you've been classified unequivocally as a liar.
Indeed.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I think, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I've been the chairman of 4 big public companies. I've been the deputy chairman of Legal and General, which is the biggest insurance company in the UK. I've been an executive director of both Granada and ITV, and a non-executive say at B Sky B. So I do have, and I was a partner in Pricewaterhouse before I did those jobs. So in terms of governance, I've had experience going back since till the age of 32 in terms of what was the right thing to do in governance. So I feel as if I have some experience in this whole area. And I wouldn't have been considered a successful chairman if I'd not been considered a successful chairman. I wouldn't have been appointed to Smiths and the capital and counties.
How do you intend to tackle these accusations from senior politicians and senior executives at the post office?
It's not good. I mean, what I have done is stand up for the postmasters. In fact, if you don't mind, the post office have had a chance to make a number of representations to you, which I hadn't realised that I had the opportunity to do. So I haven't made a representation. So I wouldn't mind reading out for a minute my views to make a representation to you compared to all the representations the post office have made, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. Right, well, my statement is, what happened to these poor postmasters and their families is a tragedy and a scandal. They have been failed time and time again by a whole host of British institutions who are supposed to be there to protect the citizen and ensure fair play. We all know that there was inaction all round by the judicial system, the government, Whitehall, and particularly inside the post office until the ITV drama Mr. Bates versus the post office, and there was a rocket then put under things. The Secretary of State, senior civil servants and post office officials are asking us to believe that everything was going swimmingly all along when it damn well wasn't. We all know that things were moving far too slowly, and you've heard from 3 postmasters today who said it even more eloquently than I could. And the reason why people have latched on to what I said in the Sunday Times was that finally someone was being honest about how deep-seated the problems were and why nothing was being done. I still think that more could be done, at least to make compensation more generous and the process of getting justice less bureaucratic. But I will at least have achieved something if the sunlight of disinfectant, which the Secretary of State so approves of, means that government now lives up to its promises. What the public wants to know is, why was everything so slow? And we've talked about the 4%. And why does everything remain so slow? I've spoken up on matters of genuine public concern, have been fired, and now subject to a smear campaign. So you're quite right, and I've just given you the background for why we have it.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.